Let's continue with our Congress Palooza tonight. We just had Chairman Jim Jordan, and now we've got my favorite Congresswoman from Florida and my favorite karaoke partner, Representative Kat Cammack from the 3rd District down there in the Sunshine State. Thanks for joining us, Congresswoman.
Hey, great to be back. Thanks for having me.
Everybody's talking about this testimony from Randi Weingarten earlier this week from the Teachers Union. Now, I know that you weren't in that hearing, but I gotta ask, because I'm watching, it's like, I want to know what Kat Cammack's going to ask. If you had a chance to question Randi Weingarten, given how she's trying to rewrite history right now and her role in keeping our kids out of public schools, what would you do?
Well, I mean, I think you're seeing it play out. My colleagues have done a great job, Jim Jordan especially, of really holding their feet to the fire. It's pretty crazy that when everything was falling apart, everybody was locking down, there was such a concerted effort to keep parents in the dark, kids out of school, and to really empower the teachers' unions to do anything but teach, right? Mm-hmm. And it was all done at the expense of our kids. And so I think people have a right to be so concerned of what has transpired over the last 3 years. And I think there's a lot more to come. I think this was just kind of scratching the surface when I read some of the reports of what came out in that hearing. But there's a lot more to come, so I guess stay tuned.
Yeah, well, and specific to Congress's role in oversight here, it's got to be most disconcerting to know that during the transition even, members of the Centers for Disease Control reached out to the head of the teachers union. She's not a scientist, she's not a doctor, she's not an epidemiologist. They were crafting policy through the CDC by first touching base and running it through the teachers union. That's completely inappropriate for the executive branch, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, think about this. It's one thing to consult with multiple stakeholders just to receive some input, but to actually then take that as Bible and say, we're going to implement the recommendations from a totally non-scientific, completely unqualified individual on our guidance, that's insane. And I think that points to a bigger issue that we're seeing within, say, CDC, FDA, NIH, NSF, where you have so much gray areas, so many competing, conflicting interests, so many things are coming out that's really giving the American people, rightfully so, a moment of pause and a lot of questions about some of these recommendations that are coming out and how they're getting to the point before they release those said recommendations. Yeah. I remember one key moment here, just as an example, on the Hill. We were being told that we had to wear masks in the Capitol, and there was all this mask guidance, and there was this, there was that. And I remember a bunch of us members got together with the House attending physician and said, how did you reach the point of saying, this is the guidance that we're going to roll out with? And he said, oh, well, it's based on this study. And I said, oh, okay, can you show us the study? He gave us the study. A little quick Google search showed that not only did the study fail peer review, but that it had been done on an entirely different population on the other side of the world. And when we pressed him further, he said, well, this is basically what the Speaker of the House wants, so that's what we're going to do. And I said, are you a doctor or are you not? Nancy Pelosi is not a doctor. Why are we taking our guidance from her? It just, again, it speaks to the disaster that we're encountering every single day and uncovering more and more and more of this garbage.
Well, and thankfully, if your party hadn't won the majority, we still wouldn't be getting answers like this, considering how traumatic this was to our nation. You do sit on the House Committee on Energy and Commerce. This week, the Secretary of Energy, Ms. Granholm, she said that their goal for the Biden administration is by 2030 to convert all vehicles in our military fleets to electric vehicles. Please tell me the people at the Pentagon were laughing at that as much as we were. There's a lot that could go wrong here when we're fighting a war if we've got a bunch of Teslas zooming along.
Oh, laughable. I can tell you we had a member meeting this morning and the commentary was unbelievable. Good. Yeah. One, is that not the most idiotic thing that you can actually think of, let alone say out loud? The military is now getting on this track of going back to the green fleet, right? You can't fight wars on hopes and dreams and unicorn dust, but that's really where we're headed. We see even in the commercial applications where you have vehicles out on the road today, they don't have the towing capacity to even operate fully functionally with just EVs. So if we can't do this in, your everyday mom and pop type operation, how do we expect to run the military off of EVs? It's not feasible. This is not them following the science. This is a political agenda, and that's what makes it so dangerous. They don't care about the real science that shows us that this is not feasible, nor is it smart, but yet they want to do it anyways. And it's also at the expense of the environment that they claim to care about.
Well,
that's what's so frustrating about all this.
Well, add to that the increased reliance on these electric vehicles means that we're increasingly reliant on China, of all people. Has it ever occurred to the Biden administration that next war could very well be with China, against China?
I don't think they care, quite honestly, because for them, this is all about a political agenda. Because, and you've heard me say this before, it's all about dependency and control. They want to make people dependent on big government programs so that they maintain control by any means necessary. And when you think about the fact that you had a Democrat member, a ranking member of the full Committee on Energy and Commerce, say that China was the leading innovator for alternative energy, for green energy, and that we should follow their lead. They genuinely do not see the threat that China poses to not just the United States, but the entire world. They are looking to them as the example instead of them as an adversary. That is problematic. And that's why, truly, we cannot get to 24 fast enough. These elections have consequences, and they're playing out right in front of us.
Congresswoman Cammack, you come from Florida, and it's kind of cool, actually, that the two leading candidates for president, at least for the Republican nomination, both come from your state, Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. You got a lot of attention this week because you said, listen, I'm not going to endorse one or the other because we need, either one would be great as president, and either way they're going to be a lot better than what we've got right now. That's where I am on this as well. But were you surprised that you got a little bit of pushback and heat on that? That, yeah, come on, you have to choose.
Oh, yeah. You know, not only is it's April. It's April of 2023.
April a year ahead of time, yeah.
Out, right? And anybody who's engaged in national politics knows that there is a lifetime of things that happen between now and that actual presidential preference primary. And I've said it before, listen, I'm extraordinarily blessed to live in the Sunshine State. I think that we have tremendous talent, and I have a great amount of respect for President Trump, for Governor DeSantis. I've had great productive conversations with both of them.
Yeah.
But the fact remains is that Governor DeSantis, he's not a declared candidate. President Trump, he's a friend of mine. I respect the hell out of him. And we're going to continue to have these conversations. But I will not be bullied, I will not be forced, and I will not be threatened by anyone into endorsing. Not to say that either are. I'm just saying that there's a lot of commentators out there in the press that are starting to get very pushy. And me, for one, that doesn't fly.
Well,
that doesn't do ultimatums.
I'm not one of them, I assure you. I do want to ask you one portion of this, though. A lot of Republican voters are worried that these two powerhouse candidates are going to go at each other in such an aggressive way that it's going to cause damage for the general election, whoever emerges. And tangentially, Congresswoman Cammack, we have seen President Trump sort of talking down the great success that Florida has been, that your state has been, in an effort to call into question whether Ron DeSantis would be the best candidate for president. Are you concerned with that narrative that the conversation suddenly is from President Trump, Florida's not as great as everybody thinks?
You know, set aside for a second the dynamic between Trump and DeSantis, right? Republicans for years, for as long as I can remember, have been experts when it came to the circular firing squad,
yes.
tearing each other down. You know, that's the one thing that Democrats actually do pretty well, is that they hang tough. They may not always agree with one another, but man, they toe the party line, they get behind their person, and they all go in that direction. And I think that's why they've been so successful in really eroding so many of the great elements of our country in all the things, the big major legislative wins, et cetera.
Yeah.
They have really gone as one team, one mission. That's where we as Republicans need to get back to, which is difficult because naturally, as conservatives, we're independent thinkers. We really don't believe in the groupthink mentality, but we have to be united more than ever. Because if we get into a general election and we have absolutely been through a street fight, bloodied, and everything is just a mess,
yeah.
We can't get through that general. And the American people, I think, are hungry for some unity. They're sick and tired of the division. Yeah. So we have some work to do on our side to get our team together. I believe it's the 11th commandment that Reagan put out there. Right. You know, don't speak ill of a fellow Republican. Yeah. We need to get back to that. One team, one mission, because our country is on the brink. We have to save this country. We're in the fight for the soul of our nation.
Amen.
We can't do that if we're divided. We've got to go in as one team.
To paraphrase Will Rogers, I don't belong to an organized political party. I'm a Republican. Thanks for joining us, Congresswoman Cammack. More to come on O'Connor Tonight.